I'm Jamie Cat Callan, and my book is called French Women Don't Sleep Alone, Pleasurable Secrets for Finding Love. It's all about how French women keep their romances and their marriages really spicy and interesting, and it's really a project that is very much inspired by my grandmother, who was French, was 100% French. And, growing up, I noticed how she and my grandfather had this incredibly steamy marriage, and that things were always, really, really romantic between the two of them, although I have to say they didn't always agree with one another. I think sometimes in American marriages, we think, we believe in open communication and total honesty, and and being completely forthcoming and always getting along. And what was interesting to me growing up and watching my grandmother, I stayed with her during the summers, was that that my grandparents would often get into these little tiffs, and instead of just sitting down and discussing it, my grandmother would go into the kitchen and start rolling dough to make this apple tart she used to make, an apple pie. And my grandfather might, storm outside and go into the garage or whatever, and there would be this, this atmosphere of tension. But what I observed as a little girl was that after a little while, they would go into the bedroom and close the door. And then there was just they would just be in the bedroom with the door closed, and then they would come out, and I noticed as a little girl that they were happy. And what was great about this, after every argument, my grandfather would take my grandmother out and buy her a new hat. This was during the days when ladies wore hats, and she had quite a collection of hats. So I knew from my grandmother that I could, that I could learn a lot about love and romance from her. I'm newly married. I just got remarried in 2005. And so I decided to travel to France with my good friend Jessica Lee, who speaks fluent French and was my interpreter and my translator. And she was great because she's in her mid-30s and she's single. So her interest in this was a little bit different from mine. So I had a single gal and a married gal, and we set up these girl parties all over the country, in the cities and then in the little villages in the country. We interviewed hundreds and hundreds of French women of all ages, all types, socioeconomic types, and women of all walks of life, and we just, we got their secrets, and we brought it back, and now it's in this book. All right, so when Jessica Lee and I went to these parties in France, the first thing we asked was, what gives you this reputation for being so mysterious, so sexy? And in every instance, the answer was lingerie. That lingerie was everything. It gave a French woman her confidence. Nobody has to know she's wearing great lingerie, but because she knows it, she feels confident. And the bra and panties must match. The second most important thing is French women do not date. They have dinner parties. So they go out in groups, and it's just very, very sociable and congenial and lovely. So that's the next most important thing. And then the third one I would say is walking. They walk everywhere, and that builds confidence, and it gives them a sense of being connected to their world and being grounded.
This is not your first book.
No, right? No.
How long have you been writing, and what got you into writing?
Well, I started, I honestly can't remember ever not writing. I think I wrote a lot as a child. The first writing I ever did was for my Barbie dolls. I wrote little plays for my Barbie dolls. And then I studied poetry in college, and then went on to write fiction in the 1980s. I published 3 young adult novels. This is when young adult novels were very popular. And then I went to UCLA Film School, and I wrote screenplays. I worked for Paramount Pictures. I was Meg Ryan's assistant, working in script development. I worked for ALF, for the man, actually Paul Fusco, who created Alf. If you're a child of the 80s, you might remember Alf. Yeah, so I worked for all the puppets, and I wrote tons of short fiction, but I was a single mom, and so in terms of publishing a book, there was a big break. So my last young adult came out in 1987, and then my next book came out in 2006. But now I'm on a roll.
And what advice do you have for other aspiring writers?
You know, I think the most important thing is to really believe in yourself and to have confidence and to find a group or even just a friend who believes in you and supports you, and not to be too quick to decide, oh, I'm not good at this, because I've also taught writing since the 70s. And what I've learned from teaching writing is that a lot of times the most talented writers may come up with something that seems a little, well, quirky, and we can't completely place it. And instead of thinking of that as, oh, they're not quite polished, I think it's important to think of that as one's own unique voice, one's own unique style, and to seek out a writer's group or fellow writers who really appreciate what is unique and different about you, and people who support you, and to really hone your own voice, which is your unique style, and to believe in yourself. And it's hard work, and it's about really, really believing in your own talent.